All right, thank you for your patience. We had a long-range planning meeting that ran a little bit over, so thank you for your patience. I'm going to go ahead and call this regularly scheduled meeting of the West Hollywood Planning Commission to order. It is Thursday, March 21st, in case anyone needed a reminder. Who would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I need someone that I know. Can you see anyone? I rely on Commissioner Altschul to help me pick folks to give the pledge. Jake Stevens, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please rise. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. David, you can go ahead and do roll call for us.
Good evening. Tonight, Commissioner Buckner is absent, so the voting records will reflect that. Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Present.
Commissioner Erickson?
Present.
Commissioner Bass?
Here.
Commissioner Altschul?
Here.
Vice Chair Carvalero?
Here.
Chair Jones?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. Do I have any requests for changes, or can we move forward as it is printed?
Motion by Commissioner Bass, seconded by Commissioner Hoopengarner. And the motion to approve the agenda passes unanimous.
Thank you. Item 5 is approval of the minutes, and we have a request for continuation of these to our Thursday, April 4th meeting. I'll move this.
Moved by Chair Jones, seconded by Commissioner Hoopengarner. And the minutes are continued to April 4th, 2019.
Thank you. I'm missing something? Sometimes I skip items without meaning to, so I'm just double checking tonight. Item 6 is public comment. David, do we have any public speakers?
We have no public speakers.
Great, thank you. Item 7 is our director's report.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. John Kehoe, Director of Planning and Development Services. Just 3 announcements. At the City Council meeting on Tuesday, the City Council approved the Sunset-specific plan amendment regarding the billboards and off-site advertisements for Sunset Boulevard that we've been working on for quite a number of years, so we're very happy that that document has been approved. So we're looking forward to that being implemented and seeing new signage on the Sunset Strip. At the next City Council meeting on April 1st, there's going to be a historic designation item for 8743 Sunset Boulevard. That's kind of near the Sunset Plaza area. And we're also going to be talking about possible permit fee waivers for buildings that are undergoing seismic retrofits. And then, let's see, I also wanted to make an announcement. Let's see here. It is about Metro Rail outreach. So one of the things that our department's been working on is trying to expedite the construction of the Crenshaw Northern Extension to West Hollywood. Metro is holding a series of neighborhood meetings to get citizen input into that Metro Rail project. The one that's going to be closest to West Hollywood is going to be on March 28th. That's next Thursday. And it's a community meeting regarding the northern extension of the Crenshaw line to West Hollywood and Hollywood. The meeting will be held at the West Hollywood Library Community Room right here at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on March 28th. And that's all I have for tonight.
Great, thank you, Director Kehoe. Any questions for John at this time? You're off the hook. Thanks, John. Item 8 is items from commissioners. I'm going to do something that I don't normally do and wish a happy birthday to Commissioner Adam Bass. I also have a birthday at an upcoming meeting, although I won't share with you at which meeting that will be.
I'll make sure the members of the public are very well aware.
But I did want to wish you a happy birthday, and we appreciate you. You don't look a day over 29.
Thank you very much.
I also just wanted to know, while I have the floor, we recognize and very much appreciate that it takes time and planning and care and detail checking to come to these meetings as members of the public. I just want to note that I have a little notebook here. Unless you're watching this on TV, you won't be able to see this. But I basically write down everything that everyone says. So if I'm not looking at you directly, it's probably because I'm taking notes about what you are saying. So I just wanted to address that, and lest anyone think that I'm not giving you kind of your due. I am, and we do very much care about everyone who comes out to speak and about what people in our community have to say about projects that are being built here and about development in our city. So just for the note. And with that, Commissioner Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy birthday, fellow commissioner. It is still Women's History Month. I said this at the last meeting, but it's still Women's History Month. And one of my favorite events from when I worked at the city is the Women in Leadership Awards, and that is next Wednesday, March 27th at the London at 6 p.m. And we are honoring 5 amazing women in the city of West Hollywood: Sherry Franklin, Assemblywoman Laura Friedman, Annabeth Gish, Kamala Lopez, and Maya Paley, all of whom I know, all of whom are so. I can't believe they haven't gotten this award before, so that's interesting. We always find amazing women to give it to, but I'll invite members of the public, my fellow commissioners. I'm sure I'll see you there, and I hope everyone can go. It's going to be an amazing event. It's $15, and all proceeds benefit Susan Burton's nonprofit, A New Way of Life, which is a reentry project for women coming out of the criminal justice system, and it's an amazing, amazing organization. So just want to let everyone know.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners at this time? No. All right. With that, we'll move on to item 9. We have an item this evening on consent. And 9A is 2018 Housing Element Annual Progress Report. The recommendation is a receive and file. As we've already approved the agenda, I think we can consider that. Do you need to give a report for this? It's just a receive and file, correct? Okay, great. All right. We're speeding along here. We're already at item 10, public hearings. Item 10A is 1019 North Orange Grove Avenue, which was officially continued at our Thursday, January 19th meeting. We can go ahead and get into staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners and Chair. So as you mentioned, this is a project that was continued from the January 17th, 2019 meeting. It is located at 1019 Orange Grove Avenue, and the project is a proposed 9-unit multifamily residential building. At that meeting, at the last meeting, commissioners had a few concerns. 4 of the main concerns that were brought up is that there was a 50% habitable space that was not met. Second one was the disagreement on exemplary design. The third was that the landscaping overall was sort of flat and needed more articulation. And lastly, the plans were missing some information on windows, therefore egress and green building points were not, they weren't necessarily checked, or you couldn't really check against them because the information was missing. So those are the 4 comments that we got from Planning Commission, and the applicant has revised their plans. I'll briefly go over the changes that they made, and the applicant will have another presentation where they'll go into a little bit more detail. But for the first one, concern number 1 was regarding 50% habitable space. They've revised the building throughout on the interior, and they were able to get the habitable space on the front, on the ground floor. Here you can see that there is 16 feet in width of habitable space, and the building is about 30 feet 4 inches wide, so percentage-wise, that's about 53%. As far as exemplary design, the applicant has revised the plan to no longer request exemplary design. Initially, when the plan was reviewed by the Planning Commission, the overall building was set back at 21 feet 4 inches, and then it had the flat front setback. The actual required front setback was 15 feet 4 inches as required by two adjacent properties, taking the average of the two adjacent properties. So here you can see that the first floor is set back at 15 feet 4 inches, and the second floor and above is at 21 feet 4 inches, or an additional 6 feet. The third concern had to do with a flat-looking landscape plan. The applicant has revised the landscape plan and pretty much did a full overhaul. They've added 13 new species of shrubs, 3 species of ground cover, and 3 new species of trees. And lastly, to address the concerns regarding egress and green building points for cross ventilation, the applicant has provided information with a window schedule as well as details on each different types of windows, and these coincide with the elevations and floor plans, and you can pretty much go through each page back to back and match up each window to the window schedule with the elevation and on each floor plan. Here's the revised front elevation of the proposed 9-unit apartment building. And basically with the revised project, it meets all development standards of the zoning ordinance as described in the previous staff report. The revised project also successfully responds to the Planning Commission's concerns discussed at the previous meeting. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the project request as revised, subject to the findings and conditions of approval set forth in the attached resolution under Exhibit A. If you have any questions, I'm available, and the applicant as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. I'm going to open up this for Derek to questions from commission. Again, just limiting it to questions at this time. Do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Yes, thank you, Derek. The same question is applied last time. I'm not seeing the transformer pad on the plans. Is it going underground, or?
The applicant can talk a little bit more about this, but from my understanding, the transformer is not required on buildings that are less than 10 units.
Okay. Yep. That would be great. Okay. And is there a new PV technology out now? Because I'm seeing that this is showing that a PV plan of 500 square feet that's proposing to generate a kilowatt per 50 square feet. And my knowledge of this to date has been that the rule of thumb is a kilowatt per 100 square feet. And if you have 100 square feet of solar panels, you can generate a kilowatt of power. This plan only has 50 square feet, and they're saying they're going to generate that 1 kilowatt. So I'm curious if there's a new technology that's going to be employed here, or because the green building point says it's going to generate twice as much as historically has been capable of.
Sure. You know, I'm not too sure on the technology. Maybe the applicant can speak a little bit more about that. But that would be required during plan check, and that would be caught at that point. If they would need to provide more panels, then they do have room on the roof to provide more panels. They lost what the plan originally had. They had another private open space up there that has since been removed. Therefore, there's a lot more space up there to add more panels for future PV.
As long as there's sufficient space, then great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners at this time? No? Okay. Well, we will call the applicant up to the podium. We usually do that. Yeah, I guess we can do that. Actually, quickly, do we have disclosures at this time?
I just want to disclose that I live within 500 feet, but I have no financial interests, so I'll be participating.
Okay. Anyone else? No? All right, thank you.
Hi, how are you this evening? I'm Ira Leibowitz. I'm the owner of the property, and I just wanted to come up, and Armin's here. He's going to go through the presentation, but the comments that you had last time, we took into account, and I think we've addressed them in your most recent comment, certainly, as Derek mentioned. If there's an issue with the kilowatts, et cetera, we have plenty of space on the roof to make sure that we follow that. I did notice last time when I was here, sort of in the process, that once we were done, there was a lot of questions that came up, and I would ask, and I don't know if it's part of the procedure or allowed or not, but to the extent that you have some questions at the end, once we're done with the presentation, and you're looking for answers, I'm here to answer them now to make sure that they're addressed from a timing standpoint. We've spent a lot of time and effort and energy to get to this point since the time that the property was purchased, and I want to make sure that we've addressed all the things that are important to the community. But
Sure.
and that
Generally,
need to any give and take, excuse me, I'm here tonight to do that.
thank you, Mr. Leibowitz. If you don't mind, could you read your city of residence, just so we can read it into the record, please?
Sure, I'm sorry. I live in North Hollywood, sorry.
Okay,
Used to
great.
live in Encino,
It's
so
not a
it
big
took me a
deal.
second to think about it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, very
And sure, as a general rule of thumb, the way that we like to run the meeting is you give your presentation, the public has an opportunity to comment, you'll rebut, and then I will close the public hearing. Well, we would ask you questions and then close the public comment portion of the hearing and then debate amongst ourselves. But if we have questions, we will certainly ask you.
Please, yes, I saw that last time, and I just wanted to
Sure.
say that I'm here to try and address those particular things that may come up and take
All
care of
right.
it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. David, is the timer started? I don't see it on the,
It is, they have 9 minutes, 8
okay,
seconds left.
great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Armi Garay. I'm GA Engineering, and I'm here to present the project to you guys.
Could you
Thank
state your
for
city of
time.
residence? Sorry.
Okay. I live in city of Los Angeles.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Last time we were over here, you had some comments. The couple of items that was the main thing was, one was the habitable space in the front. So what we did, we relocated some of the units over there, and we feel that we actually made some improvements to the building. We feel ourselves that because of your comments, we like the project more right now than what it was presented at that time. So by putting the units in the front, we put a couple of duplexes in the front, and we think it actually worked out better for our project, and it's going to be a better building because of it. So we have more space in the front that's habitable. We moved the lobby and elevator, and to revise the landscaping to show more some hardscaping in the front to make it more appealable. As you see over there, we eliminated the open space on the roof, but we added additional balconies and patios to the front. If you look on the 4th floor, we have an open patio on the top, which we didn't have before. So we reduced the amount of floor space a little bit, but we added overall more of the open space, something that's more usable to the tenants over there. As far as the setbacks, I mean, we worked it so we were not required for the exemplary design, although we feel that our project should have qualified for exemplary design regardless, but nevertheless, I don't think we won't be requiring it. So we meet the setback requirements, and as far as other comments that you got, the windows and everything else, we actually went back and checked the windows. We met the code both for open space, for ventilation, lighting, and also the green point. I went back and I recalculated, even at the previous plan, met all the requirements regardless of whether it was transferred or trying to communicate it to you guys, but we definitely did meet all the requirements prior time also. Said particular windows, all the windows, every bedroom meets the exiting requirements, meets the ventilation, lighting, and so all your concerns were taken into consideration, and we verified that we meet all the items that you guys had concern about. And I'm here to open up. I think we improved the project. We feel it's better project because of your comments, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer anything you have.
Thank you.
Let me just add one thing before we do that. There was a recent one. I've got the slide up now. Do you have the slides in front of you as well? Okay,
Yeah.
great. So this is, it was suggested that perhaps the wood on, if you look at option 1 on the left-hand side of the picture, you can see that that's one option, is to have the wood treatment there, and on the other one is to not have it. So from a design standpoint, we're comfortable with whatever the commission thinks is better. And this is the next picture also shows you option 1 and option 2. Just an element feeling, and think.
So we're open to either one of them, whichever. We don't have any particular, you're good with it. I think, so whatever you guys, if you think that you prefer the white finish, we'd be glad to do that, or keep it at the wood. So we are open either way. We don't have any
Okay, thank you.
changes anywhere you like.
Again, as a general rule, what we'll do is if we have any public speakers hear from them, call you back for rebuttal if there's anything to rebut. If not, we'll open up the floor to questions, and then we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing and move forward with just debate and discussion.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public speakers, David?
We have
Oh.
we have no public speakers on this item.
No, okay, so this doesn't happen very often. So Lucky, so you now have an opportunity to rebut. It sounds like you don't have, there is really no rebuttal, but I do want to give the commission an opportunity to ask you questions. So I would, if there are questions from commission for the applicant, I would like to give everyone up here the opportunity to ask the applicant questions. Commissioner Caballero.
Yeah, mine isn't necessarily a question, but I was the one that made the request for this change in the elevation, just because in option 1, that floating wood panel sort of makes no sense and kind of feels, your elevations are fairly clean on all 3 sides, and that one wood piece on the south elevation just stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and I thought it would just be cleaner and more in keeping with the language that you already developed. It was continuous around around all 3 sides, and you remove the wood there. And it also emphasizes the front entrance more when you take that out. So,
I agree, by the way.
okay, so I would go for option 2. That would be my suggestion.
I agree.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hoopengarner, do you have questions? No? This also doesn't happen very often.
We had the questions last time, so we got them addressed. Okay, great.
Okay, well, I think with that, we can go ahead and close the public hearing. Oh, okay, just kidding.
You did have a question?
So I'm reopening the public hearing for
Okay.
the record.
I was just curious on your east elevation, you show that top window to be operable, and yet there's no balcony. So I was a little concerned about that.
On east elevation,
I'm on page A8.
you know what, let me.
Derek.
And this is obviously important for airflow. I personally would like it to be operable, but it looks like it's a safety issue. Not that that can't be changed, but that does change your airflow and all your calculations. So if you look in the,
I'm sorry, on the east elevation?
on the east elevation, that top window, the other 2 are balconies and they open, which I understand, and that's great. But that top one, that unit would not be able to get airflow and still have safety without a balcony.
You know, on the upper unit, the window that you have shown on the east end, that's the bedroom. And every bedroom has at least one openable window which provides the required ventilation for the room.
But if you look at that, that's a floor-to-ceiling sliding glass door.
Pardon me?
That looks like a floor-to-ceiling sliding glass door
I'm sorry.
on all 3 levels. So on page A8,
A8, yes. The window right there. You're talking about,
the top floor unit,
okay, you're talking about the, give me a second. Let me, where,
East elevation.
okay, you're talking
and
about the front elevation.
I'm only being particular about this because it is about the cross ventilation and you know, the thing we most want to encourage in terms of energy savings, et cetera, and this looks like it's not tenable.
Derek, you see where she's referring to?
I think you're talking about the front elevation, correct?
Yes, the east elevation.
Okay. And, but every one of those rooms, you get the openable windows on them. I'm sorry. Okay, I was looking at that right here. This one in the A7, A8.
Okay,
Yeah.
see right there? That's a floor-to-ceiling operable sliding door.
Okay,
And there's no balcony. There's no retaining anything, right? Isn't that a sliding door?
give me a second. You're right.
It's the same designation as the doors below.
No, I understand. I
they're
saw
all
that.
Ks. Okay?
Okay. On that one, you're talking about the bedroom all the way to the top. The upper windows.
There is some things we have to eliminate this hidden line. This is the fix, and the number K is just the casement. We
I mean,
don't have
it's
any
called out
access.
as the same specified window
okay,
as the
we-
one that's
we
on
can-
the balconies.
Okay, I think there might be a typo right there. Can be a casement window on the top, so it would be an operable window on the top, on the right-hand side. So that can be eliminated and made into a fixed panel, and then we can have a casement window on it.
Okay.
Okay, so we will definitely provide the ventilation and
I'm sure
everything.
somebody's gonna
No, no,
catch that and plan check,
I
but-
saw it right now, but you're
it's
right.
important in as much it is about, this is an east-west flow, and that's where we get all our ventilation in this
Yes,
town.
no,
And
no,
I literally
definitely.
just left the green building meeting where we talk
No,
about
no,
the
it-
importance of
But, so just wanted
airflow.
to, it was never meant to be a non-operable window. It's always meant to be something that we can be open to get the ventilation out of there.
As long as we're clear. that-
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commission for the applicant?
No.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. So I am going to go ahead again and close the public hearing, and we can move into deliberation. Anyone want to start? Commissioner Bass?
I was prepared, I voted to support the previous project. I think this is an improvement over the last one, so I'm prepared to move staff's recommendation, and I'll do that.
And just to be clear, do we have a designation that we'd like to, or an opinion that we'd like to issue in the way of option 1 or option 2?
If that's important to everybody, then I'm happy to include that, but I have no opinion on it. Then option 2. Staff's recommendation with option 2 would be my motion.
Great. Do we have further discussion or debate on this item? Commissioner Erickson?
I was a stickler on this one before with the exemplary design and comparison to the white stucco. I didn't get my wish, not saying that you had to appeal to me, but I'm not saying I'm not going to hold a grudge. No, I'm joking. But I think this design, after I've gotten to sit with it a little bit, I'm much more happier with it. I agree with my fellow commissioners on option 2, and I'm prepared to support it as well.
All right. Anyone else want to comment on the project? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
I agree, and I thank you for working with the Design Review Committee. I think this is a much improved project. The landscaping is much improved. I think you will find that the unit in front actually adds to the building, and there's a reason for that in our code.
Sure.
I do want to make sure that that PV issue is addressed, because it is part of the green points, and it's 5 of their 90 green points. So that is in fact part of the requirements. If that's going to be, you know, the incentive, that needs to meet the actual result, which I think means it needs to be 1,000 square feet instead of 500 square feet of PV. And I don't know where that goes, Derek, in the resolution, but, and I apologize in advance, Derek. I know you reached out to me. I was insanely busy this week, and I didn't have a chance to get back to you with these in writing, so that I didn't want to blindside you, but it was that kind of week. I think at this point, my only comment is going to be kind of nitpicky, but important, given that we just left the green building meeting. The trees, the additions are great, but in fact, Palo Verdes are really not a canopy tree. They're a nice ornamental tree, and the point of that code is to provide shading on the south and west side of the building, which gives you energy savings and gives heat savings to the residents of the building. And the other point of that code is that those are in ground, and those are on top of the parking lot. And so the root structure is going to have a hard time supporting that tree. And I don't know that I'm going to hold you to your feet to the fire on this one, but I think it's something that's important, and it's important that we pay attention to this in our code and on future projects. We've just had the wettest winter we've all had in memory. And what happens when you have trees planted on top of parking lots with only 2 or 3 feet of soil is that they literally float out of the ground and fall over and land on cars. We've seen it all over the news. So there's a reason for that code, and I would like us to stick to that code. But I'm not going to make it a finding on my part, even though it probably should be.
Great. Any other comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. I just want to say thank you, actually, to both applicants tonight. As a designer and architect, I understand that it takes time and money to absorb these comments that we make. And for myself, as long as the applicant feels like it's resulted in a better project, then I'm good with it. And I want to say thank you. Even your response to my request this afternoon for option 1, option 2, I know that takes time. And thank you for doing so. And I'm happy to support this project.
Great. Commissioner Altschul, you want to say anything?
I agree.
All right, I too am inclined to support the project. I do very much appreciate the applicant taking our comments to heart and making the necessary changes. I too will agree with Commissioner Erickson on the exemplary design front, and I am prepared to support the project. So without, unless there are any other comments, I think we can go ahead and call the question.
And the motion passes unanimously, noting Commissioner Buckner absent on this vote.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
The resolution-
These last comments when we work with Derek through the rest of this process.
Thank you.
The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about a waiver of fees.
Great, thank you, David. Moving on to item 10B, 1223 Hayworth Avenue. Again, this was an item that was continued from our Thursday, November 15th meeting. And I would like to go ahead and, once again, Derek, turn this over to you for your staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek Purification, Associate Planner, City of West Hollywood. As mentioned, this is another project that was continued from a previous Planning Commission meeting. It's continued from the November 15th, 2018 meeting. It's located at 1223 Hayworth, and it is a proposed 12-unit multifamily apartment building. At that Planning Commission meeting, there were a few concerns. Overall, I think the main concern was that the plans didn't feel fully developed. The design didn't really carry out throughout all the elevations. Therefore, the exemplary design status was kind of in a gray area, and the commission didn't feel like they were deserving of exemplary design because it was an underdeveloped set of plans, and there was no way of showing that it could be executed correctly. I think that was kind of the overall consensus. On top of that, there was some concerns about the green screens and whether or not they could be maintained. Lastly, the commission wanted the applicant to return back to Design Review Subcommittee before returning back to Planning Commission. So the applicant returned back to Design Review on January 24th, 2019. The subcommittee was supportive of the revised project. Going off of the facade that you can see here, some additions. You can see on the left side of the facade, the tree's a little bit in the way, but there are operable mesh panels. They're sort of like shutters, I guess you can say. They are operable, so they can close and open. There's just a few different configurations that the applicant can go over in detail. Additionally, the mesh screen was revised. It was actually lengthened to provide like a vertical architectural piece, and it was also narrowed a little bit. That way it's framed by the stucco on the front. On the sides, you can see on the south elevation that the same shutters continue onto the south elevation. And on the north elevation, the same mesh screen with stucco backing continues to the north side of the north elevation. Additionally, one of the comments from the commissioners during this design review subcommittee was that the applicant add hose bibs to provide the opportunity to provide landscaping up there and maintain it themselves as tenants. So that's something that they've also added as well. And regarding the planters or the landscaping, or the green screens, I should say, on the north elevation, those have since been revised where initially they were starting on the second floor and they went up to the third floor. The planters were undersized. I think they were maybe 12 inches in width. Those since have been revised, and they're about 24 inches in width, and I believe 24 inches deep and 4 feet wide. Those planters are now on ground level, and it extends all the way to the third floor. Those green screens are also continued to the south elevation. Again, here's the overall revised plan. And regarding the exemplary design, I forgot to mention on the last meeting, but Gwen Pugh is also here, our urban designer, so he can speak on exemplary design designation if you guys have any questions on that. But other than that, the applicant can go into more detail on the revisions that they've made, but this project, it meets all the development standards required by the zoning ordinance. It successfully responds to all your concerns from the last meeting, and staff does recommend approval, subject to the findings and conditions of approval in the Exhibit A. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Do we have any questions for staff at this time, whether it's for Derek or for our urban designer? Bueller? No? All right. Well, with that, we will move into, but first, disclosures. Do we have any disclosures from anyone on commission?
I walked the property this past weekend, so just to get it in my head again.
Great, thank you. I also traverse this street on a regular basis, so thank you. Anyone else? No? All right. We will move into our applicant's presentation. Thank you for coming. If you can just please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Ralph Metzer Architects, Santa Monica. I have, I guess, a materials board, and I think we were asked to show an elevation without the landscape on it. I can hand these out. Okay. And then this is what we're going to present. I've put together just a little presentation that you don't have, so you could follow along, I guess.
Okay, just so you know, we actually have this on our screens, but, yep. But if anybody prefers a paper copy, now is your time to take advantage.
And let's see, Derek. So, yep, great.
David, is the timer good? Are we good on the timer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. As I think the previous project speaker said, you know, your comments were well taken, and we've gone back and modified the design, and hopefully And we know that we have a much better project at this time. So what you have before you on the top is the rendering previously, and then what how we've changed it. To really enhance the massing and verticality, we've raised a portion at on the front, which has the mesh screen, which we have a piece of here. We've taken the green screen, the landscape element, and used green screen, which is a system that the landscape will grow, on this, and this goes down, is attached into the planter and attached to the building, and the plants run up through it. It's a well-used product. We've also been working with a manufacturer of the mesh so that this, matches the design. This can be laser cut from sheets of aluminum, and this is the raw aluminum. It'll have a clear anodized finish on it as well. And so then if we continue, I lost my, let's see. It's not, I may have turned it off. There you go. This is just showing the renderings that we had previously, and below the newer renderings, from different angles from the front, showing how the elements have been wrapping around the building now, and work together to provide a coherent scheme. On the plan, let's see here. There we go. It really is showing that we've modified the decks, the planters, to accommodate the green screen elements. These are about 6 feet long at grade. They go down directly into planters that are on the deck, so they'll have lots of soil, lots of nutrients to be able to grow. This is the front elevation in various states of, I guess it's hard to see, of the screens that are on the decks of being open and closed. So on the left, on the bottom, they're completely closed. And I went too far on that. There you go. And then in different variations, some of the panels are fixed, as you see on the right on the bottom, but that people who live there can open and close them to provide, some privacy. This is the north and south elevations that show the green screen elements have been added in. And again, remember, on the third floor between the green screen elements are fritted glass, so it's textured glass that's part of it'll be fire rated glass for part of the exiting requirement. And it's not moving again. Okay. Again, showing the before and after. And then this is, again, up above is the before and the after on the front and rear elevations. And you can see how I feel it's a much more elegant design. It's narrower and taller at the front. It's providing some interest. We've added the screens, pulled it back to expose some of the color on the stucco. I think, all in all, a stronger project. The materials have essentially stayed the same, and you can see on the color board. And then these are some details of how, in this case, the screens work. They will have frames around them and hinges, and how they're divided up. This is the pattern of again, of the aluminum, and then it'll be set, I think, 4 inches off of the stucco. So the panels come in approximately 2-foot widths and lengths of 8 or 10 or 12 feet. We'll go through and confirm all the different sizes, and then they get pinned in the corners. And the last sheet is showing the green screen element, one piece of it from the ground in the planter, all the way up to the top. and its shape. So we're, I guess, here to answer questions. We hope you feel that, as we do, that we've have a better project that meets the desires of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do public comment and then call you up for rebuttal and then ask you any questions that we have at that time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So at this time, I would like to call Andrew Allen up, followed by Stephen Kay. Again, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence when you come up to the podium. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Allen. I'm in West Hollywood. I live directly next door to the building at 1215 North Hayworth. It's 10 feet away. I'm just wondering, I spoke with someone in the architecture builder's office about a month ago, and they were saying construction is going to be about a year, and they have to demolish the building that is there now. So I'm just wondering how that's going to work for the at least 10 apartments that are on the south side, and then the other building that's on the other side. I don't know how many are in that building, because the distance between the buildings is less than where I'm standing to you. And my air conditioner, everyone on that whole side, all the air comes right out of there with the dust and air. My roommate has asthma really bad. So I'm just wondering how that's going to be addressed. And then oftentimes also, I know that there's going to be certain hours that building will be allowed, but oftentimes I work at night, and it's going to be impossible to sleep through a year of nonstop construction. Yeah, I think that's about it. I'm just wondering how it's going to be possible to survive next to that.
We'll address your questions when we close for decision, but yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Stephen Kay.
Stephen Kay, City of Los Angeles, and also the owner of 1227 North Hayworth. First of all, I'd like to thank all the commissioners for their diligent, very hard work. Staff, I know how hard you work, and the wonderful architect that has presented a beautiful building, and the owner who's made it all happen. My only concern, I think it's beautiful, my only concern is, from what I understand, they're going to be very small plants. And I'd like some knowledge of what size those plants are going to be. If they're 1-gallon plants, it's going to take 3 years before the building looks like it does in the pictures. So that's one concern, and I don't know how to answer that. And the other concern is where the air conditioner units are going to be. If that will create a nuisance for my tenants.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you just said?
The condenser units.
Okay, thank you.
And that's just a question. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
The following chose not to speak, but they wanted their names read into the record. They oppose staff's recommendation of approval. Joan Morton.
Great, thank you. So the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut.
Thank you. The
Chair?
plant,
Chair, we have one more that would like to speak.
I'm so sorry. We have another public speaker?
We do.
Hi, can you please state your name and city of residence? You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Alexey Mayetny, and I live in 1215 North Hayworth. So my question is, my window next to this building, and it's less than 2 steps, because when I open my window, one time was strong wind and my window was broken. So the glasses go on the roof of next building. So it's not 10 feet. Second question, they built the building 3 floors. All the street, it's very unique buildings. It's every buildings on the street have a style, but all together they have one ensemble together, everything together looks good. And now you want to building like modern 3 floors, so all around building will be low. So we don't see the sun, we don't see nothing, we don't even see the sky because it should be too close. I understand sometimes you build new buildings like on Norton, but Norton is bigger street and you can see around, it's not so close to each other. But these buildings, they built, I think it's a long time ago, and they so close each other. It's not unfit there. Thank you.
Okay, we'll address your questions when we move into deliberation. Thank you. Any more public speakers, David?
No, that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I didn't skip someone. I'm sorry if that's the case. The applicant will have 5 minutes to rebut. You don't have to take all of that time, but you are welcome to it.
I won't. As I'm sure you'll say, there are conditions for construction, for time of start and noise levels and the like. So I'm sure that, the owners, it's an owner-builder, they'll take great care in meeting those conditions. In terms of the vines that are going to grow up the green screen, they're specified to be 5-gallon plants, and we'll make sure with the landscape architect that the appropriate size is planted so that they will grow the quickest. Oftentimes, putting something taller in, eventually it grows slower than if you put something a bit smaller, because it catches up very quickly. In terms of light and air, we're not asking for any. We are meeting all the standards in terms of setbacks. With the green screen, I think it gives both neighbors in a unique situation here, I think, something more pleasant to look at than typically is provided. And we meet the standards and have tried to understand all that. So again, if you have questions, we're here. We hope to approve the project this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Anyone on commission?
Where are the condensers?
I'm sorry?
Where are the condensers? I'm not easily finding them on the plans.
I can't hear that.
Where are the condensers? I'm not easily finding
Oh,
them
I'm
on
sorry. The
plans.
condensers are on the roof. Yeah, towards the front, there's a pen for them.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Yes. What is, I can't quite get the dimensions on those planters. Are they, I get 2 feet high by 6 feet wide. What's the cubic mass?
Well, they vary. I mean, they're in longer planters, so they're going to vary from they're where they protrude out. They're minimum of 6 feet, yeah, and 2 to 3 feet tall, but the area could be 10 feet long, so they'll have
With the depth?
3 feet.
3 feet?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get at the cubic mass, because that
Sure. So if they're
gets
10
to
feet
the
by
sustainability of the plant.
60 cubic feet.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner
And,
Erickson?
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have any examples of where this plant has been grown in LA to 45 feet?
I do not with me, no.
Do you have any examples of where this plant has been grown in LA?
Well, I would have to, ask the landscape architect. I mean, they made this selection based on, the design we gave them. So I feel confident that they've selected plants that will grow as expected.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Erickson?
Thank you, Chair. Could you explain to me a little bit about the design of the landscaping in the front? To me, it feels a little bit of a hodgepodge that you've put multiple plants in various areas. They don't seem to have a cohesive nature to them. And then additionally, the selection of, I think that, I was looking on the plans, couldn't find it, but the black Japanese pine at the front, it just completely feels out of place with the building and the surrounding neighborhood. And I just don't feel like it goes there, but I wanted to hear your approach, and if you can't give it to me because you're not the landscape architect, that's fine. But I just feel like you have an area there in the front that's not being properly utilized, and I just feel like it's a bunch of plants that you put in there. They're all beautiful, but it just doesn't feel like it fits.
I think regarding the selection, again, that was from the landscape architect, and part of it on the left side of the front, if you're looking at the rendering, was to help screen the wall that's behind it. So that planter is at 42 inches.
Yeah.
And so the plants are in it. There's a seat at the one side. So it's to step it up from having the barrel cactus low and then stepping up. The tree itself is a favorite of the owner, and he really requested that the landscape design be built around having that species of tree in the front.
Because I just don't see that tree anywhere else in that neighborhood. And to follow up on my fellow commissioners' comments on types of plants that are being put in a building that may or may not have an experience in growing in Los Angeles or in this general area itself, I just don't feel like it fits.
If it pleases the commission, if you want to.
I'm only one vote,
I
so I
understand.
mean,
But
that's-
if there were votes to, condition us to review, the selection of that tree and the design with staff, we're happy, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and we will move into deliberation. I just want to, before we move into deliberation, make a few quick notes if our commenters haven't already felt that the applicant had addressed. So to be clear, our first speaker, Andrew Allen, so every project that comes forward in the city is required to have, it's conditioned as part of the resolution that we either approve or do not approve, but should it move forward, there's an extensive construction mitigation plan, and those kinds of things include things like dust and noise. A lot of that's governed by city code. So I feel fairly confident that, I mean, yes, there will be some noise and some dust, but we have pretty high standards here, so I feel confident that the city will make every effort, as will the applicant, to make sure that, anything major is kind of that's reduced to the extent that we can during the construction period. But it's construction. I mean, it's going to be loud and not pleasant sometimes, especially during the day. You said you work during the night. It's just kind of the way that things are sliced here. I mean, I get it. It stinks. But I just want to make sure that you feel like you're being heard here and that, your questions are being addressed. There's no crosstalk, sorry. Mr. K, I hope that you feel that your questions have been answered in regard to the size. And just in regard to our final speaker, and if they weren't addressed, I think we can have you talk to staff or to the applicant after. But in regard to the gentleman who lives next door, so this is kind of the nature of living in West Hollywood. We have buildings of many, many ages here. I think my building was built in the 50s, and the building next door to me was built in the 20s. So there are standards that we have to meet in the way of height as per our city code and state law. So I just want to be clear about, it's, the property owner is choosing to build a new project here, and to the extent that it meets our code, that's just kind of ends up being the height that it is. So I just wanted to make sure you felt that your comments were addressed and feel that you're being heard here tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to the other commissioners. Would anyone like to comment on the project? Commissioner Erickson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Where to begin? So I shouldn't have volunteered. I'm generally supportive, I guess, of the project because I think it, as staff has alluded to, it does meet all of the standards and conditions in our code. But I'm finding a lot of differences in regards to, I too agree with members of the public in regards to how close it is actually to the other building. I feel like it is in proportional. It's not a word, but I don't feel it's proportional to the neighborhood itself when I'm looking at all the other buildings that are surrounding it. I feel almost that the first version now to this version, things have been moved around in different places strategically. It darts out more on the right-hand side or the northern side versus now it's taller. I just feel like it just doesn't feel proportional to an actual cohesive project. And I'm stuck on the landscaping because I just feel like the plants are all thrown in there and a mess. I don't agree with that tree. I don't think the landscaping in the front is something that has a cohesive story to the building that it's trying to approach. And in regards to the land itself, fellow Commissioner Javiero got me on this whole kick now about how, the building approaches the land or does the land approach the building. And I just feel like it's completely a mess and the building just does not completely fit in with that street. And I'm also concerned with, in regards, and I brought this up at the last meeting, the construction impacts to the street itself with how narrow that street is. And I believe I also mentioned that there's a median in the middle of the part right in front of this building that even narrows the street even further. So I have a lot of concerns about various parts of the project. I don't know if, technically they're not on the substance of the project because of how our hands are tied here at the local level. So But I don't know, I'm interested in hearing what my fellow commissioners think about the overall design and feel.
In terms, I'd like to have our city attorney weigh in on this in terms of precedent. I don't believe we can reject a project based on neighborhood compatibility if it is residential. Is that correct?
No.
The first thing we're looking at is whether or not it complies with all the objective development standards we have in the code. And it does sound like this project meets all of our objective development standards. So that's really the focus of what we're looking at. If there are landscape issues that need to be tweaked or other things that need to be tweaked to make it so that a majority of the commission can support the project, those are things we can talk about. But we can't really deny a project based on compatibility.
Thank
with
you.
the neighborhood.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Well, I want to thank the applicant for working with design review and making a lot of adjustments. I kind of enjoy the idea of a movable building in as much as the panels are moving. I think there's pros and cons to that. We have that in a project right at the corner of Hancock and Santa Monica, and those panels don't move, so I'm not sure how much that adds. But my biggest concerns about this are, in effect, back to the vines and the plants. And I wouldn't be on about all the green all the time, except for this is a fundamental piece of this project. And those vines, and to one of the public comments, how quickly are they going to get there? That's an excellent question. I would say it would be more than a couple years, so you're going to be looking at the metal bits and not the green bits for quite a while. But more importantly, and the reason I asked the questions about where we have examples of this growing to 45 feet tall, it's a plant that only gets to 15 feet tall. And this is a 45-foot tall building. And that leads me to believe that it might not be achievable, especially in as much as this plant wants full sun and can tolerate part shade, but it's on the north side of the building, and so it's going to have nothing but full shade. In addition, it's, to get into the weeds, but it's a native of Nepal at 10,000 feet. It is not a low water plant. It requires regular water, and in fact, in extreme heat, needs a lot of water. So I'm not convinced that that plant meets our requirements for drought-tolerant plantings, and in as much as it's such a big component of this building, both in terms of the plant material and in terms of the design, I really want us to get this right because it is so critical to what all the neighbors want and what the applicant wants in terms of how the building looks and how it performs, because that greening is also about saving energy, et cetera. I will agree with Commissioner Erickson that the front landscaping is not only a hodgepodge visually, but it's a hodgepodge water-wise. You've got barrel cactus right next to redbuds. They are different water requirements. They are different aesthetic, which is what I think Commissioner Erickson is objecting to. And if you want to go for a cactus garden with agave and cactus, great. But if you want to go for a more Japanese aesthetic, and the pine tree does grow, they're in the neighborhood. But the sort of two trees of different sizes side by side, they fight each other, and if anything, they need a third to balance them off. So I think that the landscape itself needs a tremendous amount of fine-tuning to complement this building instead of fighting with the building. That's just an aesthetic that can be dealt with, but the green vines, I'm still very concerned about. Thank you.
Would you both be comfortable working with, having the applicant work with staff to ensure that your concerns are addressed as regards the plants?
Absolutely. I just want to make sure it's on the record and very clear that this needs to perform the way we propose to approve it.
Okay. Commissioner Caballero.
Yep. I want to say thank you again for all the time you've put into the project and responding to our comments. I think the project is greatly improved, and I think you mentioned that at design review also, that you felt that way, and that makes me happy. I mean, we have a great example. Actually, I can't remember if it's City of West Hollywood, City of LA. There's a Perkins Scarpa building on Fairfax between Melrose and Santa Monica Boulevard that has these operable panels, and it's always fun to drive by the building, and it changes every day, and your building has that, can have that effect. I don't mind the eclectic landscaping. What does bother me is the different water requirements for each plant. So for me, that would be my priority, that all the plants at least have the same water requirements. The eclecticism of it is kind of like we drive through any of our neighborhoods and we have a Spanish house next to a Tudor house next to a modern house. It kind of reflects our community, and it actually reflects the street. I walk the street every day. And though the buildings do have a homogeneous feel, each building is very different. The landscaping is different from site to site to site. So I'm okay with the aesthetic. And there's a point where the owner has the right to express themselves. And if this is the aesthetic that they want to present, then I'm okay with it. But I do have issue with there being different water requirements for the plants in such a small area. Otherwise, I'm willing to support this project.
Great. Commissioner Bass?
Yeah, I generally support the project. I would agree with Commissioner Hoopengarner and Commissioner Erickson around the plant life, and I think a condition that simply instructed the applicant to work to staff's recommendation. You know, I hate planter boxes immediately abutting sidewalks. It's not a reason to vote against a project. I would love to see. I know it's only 22 inches. I'd love to see them go away, and I sound like a broken record because I bring that up every time one appears on one of these projects, and so I'd be remiss not to do it again tonight. But I think that we could condition that. What I want to say to, and my apology to my colleagues here, because it is a broken record, but those folks in the audience haven't heard it, so I will repeat it again, that there are probably 15 projects within 500 feet of my apartment that are in some phase of the construction project. So I am incredibly sympathetic to construction mitigation. As somebody who is dealing with the dust and the noise on a daily basis and probably will be for the next 5 or 6 years at least, and we approved another one tonight. So I will say that they're required to put a sign on the fence that actually gives code enforcement's number as well as their numbers. I would encourage you to use them because the more you use them when they make violations of what's in the construction mitigation plan, they're going to get tired of hearing from you, so they're just going to start solving the problems in advance, and that's been a remedy that I have used in my neighborhood, and it seems to work, and I would encourage you to do that because it's probably the most effective way to keep them, like our chair said, construction is just, it's awful, but we do our best to try to mitigate that, and I would encourage you to use the resources of the city to keep them in check, that they follow the rules they're supposed to follow. So get a copy of that, get a copy of the conditions, and hold them accountable. So with a condition on the front yard, I would be inclined to support the project.
Commissioner Altschul?
I'm in favor of the project, and I think they'll get the plants right, or they won't. And if they don't get the plants right, they may not rent or sell. I don't know whether this is a condominium or a rental, but the people won't be attracted to live there. Nevertheless, it's building housing. We have a mandate to build housing. We can't be that picky, and we can't hold up this project till they get the plants right, because once the project gets built, they still have the opportunity to get the plants the way it should be, if in fact it should be changed. Meanwhile, there are people that are going to have the opportunity to have housing.
Thank you. All right, well, just to weigh in here, I actually think this is a really beautiful project as it appears here in the plans and renderings that we have. I personally don't mind the kind of the eclectic nature of the front. If there are issues with watering, I trust that the applicant will work with our staff to get those worked out. As regards Commissioner Hoopengarner's comments about viability in terms of height and in terms of, feasibility of these actually looking the way that they do here, I don't know that I feel it needs to be conditioned, but I think I'm comfortable with the recommendation, kind of for the record, that we ask that the applicant work with staff to ensure that there is a landscaping plan in place that adheres to our code in the way of watering requirements, drought resistance, et cetera, and that it adheres as closely as possible to the kind of the green cover here that we see on the building.
There is a condition that requires a landscape plan to the director's satisfaction, and I think after hearing all the input from the commissioners, the director will know exactly what to look for in the plan.
Great, thank you. So I'll defer to city attorney here, but is it your professional opinion that we don't need to add an additional condition and that that the existing condition addresses our comments sufficiently, especially given some of the comments that have been read into the record?
Yeah, I mean, the condition just says that they have to submit their final landscape and irrigation plans consistent with standards set forth in the code and design guidelines for review and approval by the director. Landscape plans shall show all plant species, location, size, quantity to be utilized for projects with 3 or more dwelling units. The plan shall be prepared by a landscape architect or landscape contractor licensed by the state of California. We could add language that plants shall be grouped by similar watering needs.
I don't think, I mean, I'll say, I don't think we kind of need to go that far, but I defer to the kind of, again, to your recommendation, the condition I'm comfortable with the condition that's in the resolution already.
I think it's adequate to give the director enough information to know what to look for in reviewing the plans.
Okay. In terms of consensus, are you comfortable with that, Commissioner
My
Supergarner?
only concern would be, in the past, we've heard comments, and this came up, I think, from public comment, maybe last meeting, that staff, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist, and they don't remember it, and it's not brought to the fore, and therefore things don't happen. So in this particular case, just because it's the green screen in particular, the landscaping out front, well, whatever, we can deal with that. But I think making sure that that's called out and that plant material is clearly identified, it has the right water requirements and the right growth requirements to achieve what the applicant is proposing. And that would be my only condition that I would recommend. But other than that, I mean, work it out. I think the conditions achieve put your water, the water requirements of each plant in the same group, same irrigation system, et cetera. I'm fine with that.
So we could add language that green screen shall be covered by plants that can, how would you articulate what you want the green screen to do?
That the plant has the correct water requirements to meet our code, because the plant specified does not.
But I think that that's already part of the language in the condition.
The condition does require compliance with code.
And that it is achievable. This is a 15-foot plant. They're proposing it grow to 45 feet. So the achievability, I think, is the word. That it is going to achieve what is being proposed and what we are voting on today. That would be my only concern. And then leave it up to the director's discretion to say, yes, I've looked up this plant, and yes, it can go to 45 feet.
Okay, so the green screen shall be covered by plants that can viably achieve the height proposed on the approved plans. So that would just be language added to condition 7.1, which is the landscape plan condition.
I realize staff is really busy, and this is their checklist. And so to just say, oh, yes, it's a vine, yeah, this gives them that better checklist.
I just want to check in, this is kind of a little cavalier, but it's okay to check in with the applicant with this particular condition is something you're amenable to? All right, do we have any further deliberation or discussion about this particular item? Are we ready to call the question? Lauren, could you please read out the condition? I don't believe we have a motion yet, but thank you. I'll second.
Sure. At the end of condition 7.1, we'll add a sentence that reads, the green screen shall be covered by plants that can viably achieve the height proposed in the approved plans.
Great, thank you. And that is, again, in addition to moving forward staff's recommendation or calling the question.
And the motion passes unanimously, noting Commissioner Buckner absent. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Great, thank you. Moving right along, we're moving on to item 11, new business, there is none. Item 12, unfinished business, there is none. Item 13 is excluded consent calendar, there is none. Item 14A is planning manager's update. David?
Yeah, I just want to let the commission and the public know that we will be having a special meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee on April 4th at 5:30. It will take place here in the chambers, and we'll be discussing an interpretation for exemplary design.
Great, and to be clear, that is not a regularly scheduled meeting.
That's correct.
Correct?
And we will do noticing as we
Okay.
are required to do.
Great, thank you very much. Anything else?
I have a question for David.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. At the last meeting, when we had 8555, we got a letter from the West Hollywood West Residents Association regarding the 8650 Melrose project.
Yeah.
And the change in the design. And I was able to finally parse through some of their issues that they brought up. And if possible, if you could respond to these questions, because I walked by.
Is it addressed to David or is it just addressed to John?
It's addressed to John, but
Okay.
I don't see him here. So if you could just let him know that I think that this letter does merit a response, because I did walk by the building itself, and there are some substantial changes. I wasn't on the commission at that time, but I think it does. I want to make sure we're addressing our neighbors in that, and their very detailed letter.
To respond directly back to the community?
I think to the community, and if you provide that to us as a commission in an email or at the next meeting, whatever. But
Sure, we can provide an update to you. We'd be happy to.
I was going to say, I think what would be helpful is if we can possibly have John speak on that at our next meeting and just address how it's being addressed internally at City Hall. That'd be helpful and good for visibility.
Certainly, we can do that as part of the director's report.
Great, thank you, David. Anything else from you, David? No, that's it? Okay, thank you. Item 15 is public comment. Do we have any public speakers?
We have no public speakers.
All right, item 16, items from commissioners. No?
One.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Hoopengarner.
I didn't bring it up on the last item that we just discussed, but we once again had canopy trees that aren't canopy trees, not planted in the ground, getting green points that they don't qualify for and are not possible. Again, the reason for this code is for us to provide true canopy trees to shade the south and west faces of our building, to provide true energy savings and prevent heat island effect in our city. And when you plant a Palo Verde, it's a native of the Arizona desert. It is not a canopy tree. It does not provide any of the shade, very little shade, a little bit of shade, but it doesn't provide any of the water retention capabilities of a large canopy tree. And there's a reason for that in our code, especially when we're going through and cutting down dozens of trees to build these big buildings. To not replace even one canopy tree, I think is very problematical, and to award points for not doing it is even worse. So I'd like to encourage staff to really pay attention to this, because it's changing our city, and it's changing the heat of our city and the viability of our green space. Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you. I just want to make a quick note. I don't have confirmation on this yet, but there is a chance that I will not be at our next meeting, which is Thursday, April 4th. Again, this isn't confirmed, and I'll give staff advance notice, but I may have to travel to the Midwest on that date, so just a heads up. If there are no other comments from commissioners, I'll go ahead and officially adjourn this meeting. We will meet here again at our regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday, April 4th at 6:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.